Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So a couple of days ago, I read this article on the Grio about Eric Benet. Eric Benet made some comments about hip hop, and I want to take out time right now to talk about those comments. I will post a link to the article in the description box so that you can read the article for yourself and judge it for yourself. But Eric Benet made these comments, and then in response, Fat Joe had some further comments when asked about it on TMZ. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read Eric Benet's comments and then provide my commentary. So this is what Eric Benet posted on his Instagram page. It said, "Rap artists, if all you rap about is killing black people, degrading black women, abusing drugs, materialization, living a low life, then you are not an artist. You are a black face for white supremacy. You are being used to help destroy your own people." And then Eric Benet also commented this. He said, "Inconvenient truth to some of the rich and famous." So Fat Joe was asked about this on TMZ. A reporter approached Fat Joe and they said, "What do you think about what Eric Benet had to say?" And Fat Joe basically says he views music as entertainment. It's just entertainment. If you live your life behind rap music, then you are the fool. Basically saying, well, if somebody follows these rap artists, they follow their example, then they're the ones that's being a fool. And this is what I have to say about this. You know, as you all know, I listen to hip hop. I'm a big fan of hip hop. I listen to all types of hip hop, even the so-called gangster hip-hop or the negative hip-hop. And this is what I'll say. I don't think that it's just music, you know, for a wide range of reasons. Number one, the music influences the culture. And vice versa, the culture influences the music as well. But we know that a lot of trends are driven by the hip-hop industry. If people notice a hip-hop artist wearing a certain type of clothes, many people will try to imitate that and wear the same clothes as that particular artist. If many people hear about this artist using certain types of alcohol, drinking certain types of alcohol brands, many people will try to emulate that artist and drink those types of brands as well. Like they see Diddy, for instance, drinking his Ciroc. You'll have people trying to do that, get the Ciroc. Or back in the day, you had people like Jay-Z and other artists talking about Cristal, and then you had all these people trying to follow behind them drinking Cristal. You had artists, for instance, wearing Versace shirts, so then you had all these people trying to wear Versace shirts. You had artists, for instance, like Lil Wayne wearing Vans, and then you had a lot of people trying to follow that trend and wear Vans. You have rap artists sagging their pants down low, and now you have a lot of young people sagging their pants down low. You have rap artists singing about lean, you know, so-called lean, where they're mixing, you know, soda with codeine and other types of drugs and candy and stuff like that. So now you have a lot of people trying that out because it's popular in the music and the culture. And then you have people glorifying drug culture, you know, the lifestyle of selling drugs and, you know, gangsterism and stuff. So you have some people who follow that example. And it's very important to point out how corporate America knows that these rap artists are trendsetters. That is why they pay them millions of dollars to advertise products. Just like companies pay other stars to advertise products because they know that these stars have influence and power. So we can't negate the impact and the influence of these rap artists. If corporate America has enough sense to realize that if they get one of these rap artists to promote a product, then that product will sell more so if they didn't have that artist promote a product. I mean, just think about back in the day, you had Run DMC singing about my Adidas. So then you had a lot of people trying to get Adidas, you know, wear Adidas and stuff like that. You have rap artists singing about Gucci or Louis Vuitton, this and that. And you have the people trying to follow behind those artists and get those types of products. So these artists have influence. It is not just music. Many people try to emulate these artists and follow their example, whether it's a positive example or a negative example. You know, whether it's like promoting the drug use and the gangsterism and the drug culture. People follow behind that, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. So I think that it is definitely not just music. And Fat Joe knows this. He knows about the influence of hip hop, man. So that's the first thing that I have to say. In terms of it being white supremacy, negative hip hop being a form of white supremacy, I think that there is something to that. I mean, just think about it. Inner city violence kills more black people than police brutality, and it kills more black people than these white supremacist groups do. And you have a whole music art form that promotes and celebrates death and destruction, celebrates murder in the black community. How many songs can you think of in hip hop where people are glorifying shooting and killing people? It is so commonplace that we have become numb to it. The music is celebrating literal destruction in the black community. You have people celebrating gangs, celebrating guns, celebrating shooting people. If the death and destruction of black men in particular is not white supremacy, I don't know what is. That's what it's celebrating. And it reminds me of that lyric from Self-Destruction, where this brother, Kool Moe Dee, says, I never had to run from the Ku Klux Klan, and he shouldn't have to run from a black man. And, again, the inner city violence is more detrimental in terms of the actual numbers than police brutality and, these white supremacist attacks. And the fact that you have an art form that celebrates that does speak to this whole issue of white supremacy. It's like you don't even need a Ku Klux Klan. You don't even need police brutality when you have black people killing each other and celebrating it in art. So I think that that is a very valid point. And all these things lead to the destruction of the black community. Not only the killing that I've talked about, but you also have the problem of mass incarceration that this thing only feeds. Anytime you're celebrating a culture that leads to prison time, that leads to death, that is a form of white supremacy. When you're celebrating engaging in activity that can result in black people being locked up for years upon years, you are feeding the system of white supremacy. When you celebrate using addictive substances that destroy the community and selling these substances, you are celebrating the destruction of the black community. And you are, in fact, doing the bidding of the white supremacists. They don't need a KKK. They don't even need to do anything when they have black people already on autopilot, the auto self-destruction. They don't even need to do anything. All they have to do is sit back and watch it happen. Now, I know that there's some larger issues that have to be addressed. Obviously the violence in our community is not created by some hip hop song solely or anything like that, but it does have influence. The white supremacy that causes the violence has to be addressed. The problems of poverty in the black community, that has to be addressed. The problem of unemployment in certain segments of the black community, that has to be addressed. The problem of poor and failing schools, that problem has to be addressed, because all these problems feed this problem of inner city violence, and it feeds the problem of mass incarceration, because if people were not deprived of certain opportunities, then they would not even have to engage in that type of criminal activity. So that is a form of white supremacy, the way the system is set up to deprive and neglect certain communities, many of whom are black communities, struggling communities. And then when you look at hip hop, you got to ask yourself, who owns these record labels? Who owns the radio stations? Who is responsible for promoting these different artists, giving them certain platforms, giving them certain attention, so that they are able to sell records. When you look at all of those things, you will see that it all boils down to the white man. The white man controls these record labels. The white man controls these radio stations. The white man controls all of these different businesses that help promote this negative music. See, if an artist is talking about knowledge, if an artist is talking about empowering the Black community and waking the Black community up, those types of artists are pushed to the margins in today's environment. There was a time when you had conscious hip hop music at the forefront, where you had a Public Enemy, where you had an X-Clan, where you had all these different groups doing the knowledge. You had Brand Nubian. Different groups talking about different things to spark people's interest. People learned about Assata Shakur, for instance, through hip hop. They learned about a Farrakhan or a Malcolm X. They learned about them through hip hop, and they were inspired to read more and learn more. But today, we don't have that kind of situation. Today, the conscious rap artist is pushed to the margins. Today, the conscious rap artist is called a backpacker and all that kind of stuff. And they're marginalized. Whereas the music that celebrates the destruction of our community, the music that celebrates the degradation of the Black woman, the drug use and violence, all of that music is put to the forefront. And the knowledge and the conscious stuff is pushed to the back. In fact, it's pushed so far to the back that even conscious artists don't even want to refer to themselves as conscious. That's the state that we're in right now when it comes to hip hop. So, I think that there's something to this. And in many ways, the modern day rap artist is a minstrel. He is no different from those minstrels that wore blackface, the minstrels that wore the red lipstick and had their eyes bucked out, had the knotted wigs and behaved like buffoons. And it's no coincidence that, during Halloween, when these white people want to make mockery of Black people, the first thing that they do is they dress up like a Lil Wayne. They dress up like one of these rap artists, because these rap artists often are a caricature of the Black community, much like the minstrel was the caricature of the Black community. You had these artists with gold teeth in their mouth, with a whole bunch of gold chains on, acting like fools and buffoons. That's what's being promoted out here. Now, there's another thing that I want to touch on, and I wonder if Eric Benet was like taking a subliminal shot at Jay-Z. I wonder if that's part of what this is about, because Jay-Z has this song where he's talking about never go Eric Benet, where he's basically using Eric Benet's name as a term, like when somebody screws up and they end up losing a fine woman because they're cheating and stuff like that. So he basically turned Eric Benet into like some kind of verb or something. And I wonder if this is a subtle like jab at people like Jay-Z, because Jay-Z is one of those artists who for years promoted, drug dealing, promoted big pimping, promoted violence in his music and all that kind of stuff. And he's reached a place where he no longer has to do that, but that's how he got to the top. That's how he generated a lot of money and wealth. So I wonder if that was like a subliminal jab at him. Now, the last thing I want to address is this real quick, and that's this whole issue of, I talked about who controls these labels and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, despite the influence that these people have, nobody is forcing these artists to be a coon. Nobody is. They don't have to do what they're doing. Just like nobody is forcing people to sell drugs in the neighborhood. Nobody is forcing people to be in gangs. Nobody is forcing them to engage in self-destructive behavior. So even if you have a society that deprives you of resources, at the end of the day, you have the opportunity to be the captain of your own soul and the captain of your own destiny. We can't sit back and just blame people for all of our problems. We have to take control. We need to seize control of our community.